And hello everyone, I am back. Good to see you. Paul Tranny, Principal Worldwide Evangelist for Adobe. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me as part of my masterclass where I get to be with you for an hour, which is going to be awesome. Yeah, so Mia, that's a good question. Like Pixel Squid, you see some Pixel Squid in your future. I'm into it. I actually wasn't thinking Pixel Squid, but I think I have to now. So we do this live, you know? So that's the power of live, is we can dive into some things that are related to the topic. That might not be on my agenda, but I'm here to answer your questions and to help you get better, help me become better in some way, right? That's the whole goal. All right, so let's switch on over and dive right into this, shall we? Here is my screen, and thank you so much for hanging out with me. I think Jason's up after me as well, and I hope you guys don't mind. I'm going to take off this ridiculous cardigan. It's not like I don't have heat in my house. I'm burning up. Pixel Squid is awesome. Awesome. So, Sean, I appreciate your talent because I feel like what you've been posting has been really strong, so it's so good to see. So yeah, this will be fun. Let's take a look. Let's open up Photoshop. This is Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge, or excuse me, Masterclass. I just finished the Daily Creative Challenge. But I usually like to kind of like sometimes I'm inspired by an image or an idea or something else that I saw that I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that like in my work. And I think I've really been interested in light lately because I'm really into like this image, sort of the light coming from this side and this side. So this just is going to add some nice, it's going to be some like nice drama for this image. So that's kind of what I'm working on. So let's go ahead and let's just jump this layer. First thing I'm going to do is I just kind of noticed that I might need to do a little cleanup. This like tattoo, it's cool, but you know, we're trying to keep this person as a generic kind of just generic person. She has a 7 there. Let's just remove that like so. And of course we can brighten it up. We can work on the levels and different things, right? That's what I usually like to do. I like to go for auto buttons, like right over here in the levels panel. There's this auto button, boom. And you can see it's adjusted it accordingly, right? You could always roll any of these adjustment layers back by hitting this button right back here, and you could do it yourself. I know that this actually is not true black because we have this gap right here. So I could say, hey, make the black a true black, like so, and then I could also kind of brighten up everything. But I'm just kind of seeing what I'm working with. Like, look at that. This is more like, this is gonna be so much fun. I'm so excited for this. I hope you guys don't mind. It's very much like, kind of like my style, but the subject matter shouldn't matter. Hopefully like what you learn is what matters, and hopefully I make something cool. So, Uzail, I'm doing well. Denver, Pennsylvania. Harry, there's a Denver, Pennsylvania. That's cool. So anyway, so this is pretty cool. I'm actually realizing there's more background back there than I actually realized. So let's do our magic trick, which is, you know, just going over here to remove background, pop, right, and see what happens. Sure enough, it removes the background. Man, we're getting lucky here, right? We'll double click, we'll use our refine edge. I know it's not 3D yet, we're still just working on 2D, but we're setting up our image, right? We're gonna set ourselves up for success, create something nice like that. Even as I go right in here, this is how impressive this refine edge brush is, by the way. Right, and it's gotten smarter. So we actually released an update to it at Max it makes it even more intelligent using some AI technology. But this like tool, like we're actually grabbing some of that color through that tool, which is just so impressive, right? So again, might want to size it down. It's helpful to still be like exact as possible, but you can go through and obviously kind of grab some more of those colors like so, and it's just so impressive, don't you think? All right, so that's looking pretty good. Let's call that a day. Let's new layer with layer mask, click OK. There's my new version, and there she is, right? Still just like that. What's fun about this is we can throw a color back here, and then I'm gonna get into 3D, I swear to you. But we're setting up our image, And yeah, we're going to throw a color back there, right? Might be light, might be dark, but you could see sort of the flexibility that we have now with all of this, right? Let's turn off that. There we go. That's even better. It was messing with the colors a little bit. I actually don't know what I'm going to go with, but we can kind of play with this background for what I'm doing. Since I want it to actually glow from the center, I want to give it a radial glow, like a radial gradient. You can change your gradients right up here. So it's not always going to be linear. In this case, I want it to be radial. So I change that to radial. Now when I click, oh, that's more like it. That's actually what I want. I want it to be sort of bright in the center, right? And then fall off and get darker. So kind of like this, okay? You guys get the idea. I'm going to modify this slightly. All right, I'll sample that color. We'll do something like that. Okay, that's what I'm kind of going for. We have that light source, and cool. All right, let's save this. All right, Jan, I didn't think I said any words of wisdom when I started out. I was just like, hey, everybody. All right. So here we have this. We have our image. It's just called skull. Oh, skull drama background. That's a hint at what we're going to work with. So there is 3D in Photoshop. So we can go to Window 3D. We have this 3D panel right here. So we could work with 3D in Photoshop, right? But we also have a whole separate app that I want to focus on when it comes to 3D. And what I want to do is I want to match 2D up with 3D. But know that you can, right in here, is you can create sort of a 3D extrusion of text. You can create a primitive, as they're known, right in here as well. So again, you can make that cube or whatever, right? And you could do some other things as well. You could also import 3D into Photoshop as well. So let's go out here. Let's do skull. Let's grab a skull that I hopefully have or not. All right, let's take this helmet OBJ. So if I want to put a helmet on her, there's that particular file. I can load that in. It has to be an OBJ, okay? So just a basic object file. I typically use, there's Pixel Squid and then there's Turbo Squid. I'll typically go to Turbo Squid and search for, say, skull or whatever, right? Then right over here, this is where we'll select free. So we'll search for free images, free skull images. They mix in the ones that cost money versus the ones that are free. And, you know, just like everything, you get what you pay for, right? So this one here is $49. It looks much better than this free version, right? That one's pretty darn nice, right? Compared to the free version. But I'm going to show you one better as well. We can download this one really fast. There it is. OBJ on my DESK. And then we can go to stock.adobe.com. So let's not forget about stock.adobe.com. And if you want to know where we have free assets, just go stock.com, do a /free. It's like, hey, you got free stuff, Adobe Stock? Oh, yes, we do have free stuff. You can scroll through these images and all that good stuff. But we also have a very specific 3D section as well. So from here, you can type in flowers or whatever, try to find what you need to. And these are probably going to be cheaper than your $49 cost. Like, here's this one. And I apologize. I just realized this is one thing you need to always kind of like look out for, by the way. I don't know if some of you have a work and then a personal account, but these do not match up. So I'm going to try to sync this to the library, and it's not going to appear from my browser to my desktop because I'm logged in as someone else. So that's fun. Let me just log out really. Oh, so here we go. Right here. Sorry. And we can take care of that. Okay. Highly unlikely. I know there should be a skull on my desktop. I don't know why. Either way, but that's why I wanted to just show you guys how to find other assets out there. And again, you could always make some your own 3D content. All right, so this is where I switch screens really fast, just so you don't see me type this in. I don't know if it's going to be a huge issue or not. Even though I actually almost enunciated every single number, but I did get logged in, and now we can switch back. Okay, we're back. Here we are. Now, flowers, you get the idea. There we are. So here's my licensed versions. I could re-download it. Let's save to library. It's going to save it to a new library. How creative, right? And a number of other options. Okay, cool. So those are where you find 3D. You could also make 3D. Like I said, in Photoshop, we can go in here. We can go and type in some text really fast. Let's type in Mia. Let's change the font to something a little bit more interesting. And from there, let's go ahead and create new 3D layer from, oh, not from file. Here we go. Let's just go over here, like I said earlier, 3D extrusion, create. It says, hey, you want to switch the workspace? No, because I already have this 3D panel up. Right, there it is. So there it is. We could hide that, but you can see that text is now 3D, and I can kind of move that around, and I can move around the camera. So again, this stuff is going to take, this whole idea is going to come into play when we jump into dimension. But we have the current view. We're going to rotate around the current view like so, right? We have these different options for panning, right? We could zoom in. So we're zooming in on this current view. We're not really moving the object. But if I select the object, now I'm actually moving it. So consider this 3D panel. These are like your layers, right? So think of these as layers. So be mindful of what you have selected, because that's what you're going to be moving. Okay? So we see that there, right? Again, I can rotate that around, or I could get really exact with this. So I can say, hey, I actually want this to be flat, 0, 0. There we go, because I moved it around. And that's kind of how you deal with sort of 3D in Photoshop. Okay. Yes, Mia, here you are. Right, we'll drop that behind her head. We'd make it look 3D, something cool. You guys get the idea. Okay. That's actually a 3D element that we've made. We could always export this out. Did you know we could do that? We could take this, export 3D layer. Let's make this an OBJ. Export that out to the desktop. And we'll just call this Mia OBJ. And now we've made one, so we could use that now in Dimension. How you guys doing? All right, let's move on and make some fun things. Just like I said in Turbo Squid, here's our OBJ that's actually on our desktop. So let's go to good old Adobe Dimensions. So we said, hey, you know what? This one little panel doesn't really cut it for doing the type of 3D that designers want to do these days, right? We need to go beyond this one little panel, and then this property is over here, right? We need to create something solely for designers that allows you to work with 3D that doesn't have all the complexity of 3D. So we created Adobe Dimension, right? I get it. This is a Photoshop masterclass, but you know what? You create PSDs out of here, right? So this is kind of like the Photoshop of 3D, because just like Photoshop, Photoshop doesn't really take photos. You're not really making things in Dimension. You're making some things, but it's not doing a ton of modeling. It's more about compositing. So we'll go create new. This is what I'm going to do, by the way. Let's go back out here. There it is. There's the image. I'm going to export this out. Why not? It doesn't even need to be a JPEG, but I'll make it a JPEG and put it on my desktop. Right, so this is Skull Drama background JPEG. Because what I want to do is I actually want to load that in here in this background. So that's what we'll do. We'll drag that right in there. Boom. There it is. Match, resize the canvas to the image aspect to the image size. So this is, I've made this mistake before because you don't want to match it just to the aspect ratio. Look, if I just match it to the aspect ratio, my canvas, let's wait for it to change, is actually, if I can click to it, is only 512 by 768 because it just matched the dimensions, right? So that's one thing I don't want to do. I want to go in here and match image size. Create lights, create multiple lights based on that photo. So it actually should give me some nice directional lights that are all different colors because it matched this photo. Notice how this directional light, it may look like it's white, but it's actually a tint of yellow, right? We have this second one, this one tints blue because it highlights this side. The reason I did add that background color back there, so it might have made this second light a tint of that background, but it tries to make all those lights for you. Okay. All right. Fantastic. You make animation with 3D in Photoshop too. Yeah, you can make some animation in Photoshop as well with some of the 3D as well. Okay. Yeah. That is correct. All right, so we have her right there. Let's drop in the skull because we can. It already has this awesome drama. And here's this skull that I could bring into the mix. Okay, so right over here, here we have it. Kind of move that around. Just like I was talking about earlier, we can move things and then we can move around the scene as well. So I can move the object or I can move the scene. I'm kind of moving the scene, right? Moving the object. First thing I do, by the way, Biola and Cornell and everyone, when I drop something in, it always comes in as a weird size. It's like, what's this crazy size about? It's off the canvas. It's either too large or too small. So you just click this little magic button right here. It says, hey, you know what? Position the camera so the skull is in view. So you don't have to worry about manipulating all that other stuff. You just, boom, do that. And now you're in it to win it. You can grab that skull, move it around, right? Maybe move it up, right? In this case, maybe I want to kind of shrink it down a little bit, like so. You guys get the idea. And using these on-object controls to manipulate this into place. So let's get some work done, folks. I got a job to do, and that's to try to impress you, which is always so hard because I know I've been seeing a lot of the entries for the Daily Creative Challenges, and I'm like, geez, you guys are too good. Just stop it already. But this is what I'm doing. I'm scaling this down. The reason I'm able to scale this down, even though it looks like I can only scale down the top part, I just hold down the Shift key. Just like 2D objects, you're scaling it down in a 3D way, right? Scaling it down like so. Got it? Cool. Let me just double check preferences, by the way. By the way, I can change this from light to dark. I don't know what you guys prefer. I feel like sometimes for live streams, it's actually a little bit easier to see the light interfaces. But unlike XD, hint, hint, where are the XD folks? I can't change it from light to dark. It's only light. They just decided one day, hey, everybody likes light. I should be more kind. I'm sorry. Okay, so here is... yeah, so what about copyrights? Yeah, we would have to take a look at that. I know this image in the background is copyright free. Check for whatever site that you're using. So right in here, I'd have to double check the copyright for the skull, right? And a lot of times they actually give it to you when you download, but not always. So that's what I would take a look at. So just be mindful of that, right? I can't turn around and say I created it. All right, so here's the skull. I could select the skull here. We have the upper skull, the lower skull, different parts of it. There's different textures we can add to it. There is our skull. That's right. Let's actually add some cool texture to it because I feel like that's what it needs most of all. But for this one, there's actually different parts, which is pretty cool, you know? I could work with this. So yeah, let's just go ahead and go to our starter assets. By the way, this is something I totally overlooked as well. Yeah, you could bring in all your basic shapes and all that fun stuff right in here. I'll get into that in a second. But also right over here are pop materials. Right in here. Okay. This will be interesting. What I end up using. So that's kind of what I'm taking a look at now. Let's just apply one. Let's take any one of these textures, like this marble texture. Sometimes you'll drop it on an individual item. Of course, it's going to make that individual item like that color or that, give it that material. But you could also drop it on the folder in its entirety and it applies it to everything. Okay, so there we have that. We have brass. The brass might give me some of the reflection I'm looking for. Or I can go with something like a little bit more natural as well. But look what it's doing. Do you see what it's doing as I applied this brass? It's actually reflecting her in this reflective material, right? Because that is your light. All right, there we go. Let's do this. So a couple things I'll take a look at. Maybe I'll turn on and off some of these lights. This is really bright. Geez, I kind of feel like I need to make this a little more simple because it's almost getting too complex with all those reflections, right? So we'll go back to this version and let's work on the lighting, right? We can see where some of this lighting's coming from. We have these different directional lights, but also off to the side, we have these different lights that we can add ourselves. So we can add our own individual lights if we want to. In this case, it already added 3 directional lights, which is currently what I'm gonna work with because this is a better place to start. Where are the flowers? Ugh, they're coming. Is that okay? Hey, you know, we kind of missed, I feel like I missed Day of the Dead, which was like a month ago. Because of Max. Right, so let's turn that off. We have this environment light. I want the whole thing to be darker, right? We could take this down, right? And then start turning off some of these lights and seeing where everything's coming from. This directional light as well, like, looks like it's coming from the top, right? Let's rotate it around. We could see what that light is doing. Taking the height down, right? I want this light to actually be the blue light. Let's do that. And what we're doing, this is what we're doing. We're matching this photo, excuse me, the 3D with the photo in this scene. So I want one blue coming from one side. You can see it right there. Let's turn this on. It doesn't really, honestly, it really doesn't matter which one I use because I'm going to modify it anyways and get it into place. Stay tuned. We got some, probably some pro video and audio techniques with Jason up next. Let's crank this up. Here's our rotation. We can see how that's working. Oh yeah, right? We want it this side. Hey, you know what? The height, bring that down. Let's rotate it a little bit more. Right there. Again, just trying to give that splash of color on that side. See? Like so. How's everybody doing? I feel like I've been talking a lot today. Let's take this down to kind of working on the softness of the edges here. And this is, of course, the size of the light. So again, we select our object up at the top, and then we mess with the properties down below. If I want more contrast, right? Since I already have this cranked up to 200%, I could also take up the size, and it's going to give me even more pop, if that works for me, right? So I'm going to have a couple different options in here, but let's kind of render this out. Let's get this party started, shall we? Let's get this party started. This one actually looks okay, right? So let's take this upper skull. I'm going to go into this upper skull, clicking in it. We could see this is a glossy paper. That's actually all I used for this was a glossy paper, apparently, which is totally fine. I do want to make sure everything matches up just right, too. But I think this one's at a good starting place. I feel like I have the angle right. Let's save this file because I haven't even saved it yet. And I want to get into some other things as well. So I don't want you to think that I'm all about skulls and flowers and stuff. Skull lady. Because I have other examples of just ways to apply texture. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to do with this regular texture. We're going to go to cloud. It's going to render in the cloud called Skull Lady. It's going to be on high quality. It's going to create a PSD and it's going to put it in my Creative Cloud Files folder. So let's render that out. It doesn't mess with my process, right? So now the fun part is I get to go back in and switch it up. Okay. Is there a way to affect the shininess of the skull? It looks wet. Go in your textures, because that's a great question, right? I kind of wanted some of that, but I also want to make a version that doesn't have all that shininess. But that's going to be right in here. We'll go into the texture, just double click, and we can typically see the roughness. So right down here, see how shiny that is right there? Let's take the roughness up, and that smooths it out, right? So right now there's no roughness, so it's totally smooth and totally shiny. Add some roughness, and that's going to smooth it out some, which also I think is just a great suggestion, by the way. Okay, keep in mind that you can also go to, ooh, baby, I got some stuff in here. You can, from Adobe Stock, download other assets. So don't just think that it's going to be 3D models, because there's also some great lights and materials, right? Because really the materials is what's going to take this to the next level, okay? Just like I've done, I've downloaded some materials, some just rusted sort of really like rustic materials to make this look old and not so shiny, and we could try some of those. Let's try this rusted one. It might be like a rusted wood, but let's just see how it looks. Oh no, that's a rusted grate. Let's drop in this next one. This black rusted. Oh yeah, look at this. Totally different look. The key thing here is like I actually want to use both. So for this one, I actually do want to kind of crank up the light a little bit more, right? Shoot, let's do this. Let's add another light to it. That's right, there are no rules. Adding a second light right there. Now that pops out a lot more, and I'm totally into this. This is the next version I would go ahead and render. So yeah, I think you're right, Harry. This dark one, this is the right texture. I totally agree. It's the right texture. This is the one I need to go with. There's more I need to add. Actually, I'll do that while this other one's like rendering out, by the way. So it's still rendering out this other one. I just want to cancel it. It's only at 8%. But let's add some more to this really fast. Bear with me. Let's just have some fun, shall we? Let's grab some. Yeah, you guessed it. I have more. I have a whole other project I want to do, by the way. And I'm 30 minutes in. So I want to really move through this and then show you some different ways to create content. Oh, look at how small that is. Hey, little buddy. Oops. There it is. Size this up. Rotate it around. Like so. Bring that up. Sometimes when you're doing compositing like this, you'll have this situation where it's actually disappearing into this invisible ground. So you do want to get rid of that, of course. And I gotta see where that is. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I need to scroll up a little bit more. That's your ground plane. So we'll see right here. It's like disappearing. We'll go to change the ground plane, just turn it off entirely. And now we can see the whole thing, and now we're not restricted by that at all. Let's take this up, right up here. And what I would typically do is render this out with all these various elements, with these different lights as well. All right, so we'll drop that in there. We'll maybe put one on the other side. Actually, let's not even bring in another one, because I could just duplicate the current one. Okay, with this one selected, there we go, Command D, move it over, bring it up, rotate it around. There it is. Zoop, like that. And then bring it in. It doesn't actually have to be perfect because I'm going to do a lot of this compositing in Photoshop. So let's save this file. I'm not even going to wait for the render because I already have this done. Okay, so let's just fast forward 10 minutes or so, and I'll show you the version that I've rendered out. Even though I love this skull, that's what I might do. I might render this one out on my desktop and then like drop in this skull. So I think I might do that. Oh, the rendering's at 50%. Jerk. All right, anyways, while that's rendering, let's go ahead and close that down. Let's go to the version that I have and some of the things that I was going to show you as well. Oh yeah, right in here. Oh, there's almost too much already done. All right, and this is typically what you get. This is actually a low-res version that I made earlier with just like a different skull, right? We can actually do auto, like you could see the skull right there, and we can start to blend this in, right? So this is where I do more matching. I can take down the opacity, but typically what I would do is I'd go in here and I would change this, change the blend mode, right? Because we just want like a highlight of. Like that looks pretty good. But this is what you get with the render that we can work with. I'm sorry I've been ignoring chat. Can you change the texture without changing the color? Let's go to it. Here's your base color, which is actually an image. And then a lot of your texture comes from these other options. So if you wanted something to have roughness, you can add a depth maps, and now you know how to do it. All right, so let's move on. We have that, Command J, let's jump that. Let's change this new one. Maybe we have one set to lighten. We'll add a layer mask, B for brush, reset that tool, get this back to where we want it. X to flip the colors, right? Because what I want here is I just want to bring in just a little bit of this, the highlight ultimately. All right, I also want to move on to another subject that I have going on, because this is one way of like using 3D and mapping it in Photoshop. So it's like we went from 2D to 3D and now back to 2D. Let's open up this version. Again, this is a different render, a little more high quality render. So again, let's fast forward another 5 or so minutes. You could see just different layers being added. Let's focus on just the face. Here's sort of the darks. This is set to darken to match up and just kind of give it some depth. And then you have the lighten portion right here. So we have that just set to linear light currently. Okay. I might make those. Let's undo that. Let's do this really fast. Normal, smart object, and then change this to lighten background to work with. There we go. That works fine. All right, from there I can paint a little bit more on that face. I can add some of those flowers that we see right in here. Same situation if we take a look at those. Let's crank up the opacity. And let's actually see if my render is done and if I can close this file. Not quite yet. Oh, it looks like it's about done. Just finished. Let's save this. We have that rendering that we can use, but also you can look at the original file that I was working on over here. Yeah, perfect, Richard. You can specify an image file as a surface. And by the way, when you're doing that, you can drag images directly from. So right in here, here's this full skull, right? That's this pattern's probably mapped perfectly with this skull, but you can go ahead and grab something even from your library and drop it on here. So. All right, cool. We have that. You can see how this is set up. All of these things came from this one file. I did one render because all the lighting is where I wanted it to be. And then we go into Photoshop, we start piecing all that together. It's like, hey, here's another one. Let's drop this in back here, right? We want to add more light to this. What I would do is I would group these into one new layer, add a new adjustment layer. Yeah, let's do levels. Clip it to that new layer group, and now this controls the brightness of all of those flowers, right? But I don't want brightness across all those flowers. It makes it look very one dimension. That's when I'd start painting with it, right? I'd start painting on a mask with black and removing parts, making some parts bright and some parts darker. I could do this on a per flower level if I want to. But again, I only have an hour. So I'm just seeing what I can get done. Here's another one on this side. We'll drop that in. And again, we could play with either the opacity or add another layer mask. Layer mask on the levels, that is, right? I use levels a lot because I'm just controlling the light and not the color. Right, so you can see how we're controlling all of that light. We want to clip it to that flower right there. And again, we can have it bright on one side and dark on the other. Let's just kind of paint away some of that, like so. The reason I do this typically is because I decide overall it's too bright. I can always go back into my levels and adjust accordingly, like so. Cool. How we doing, folks? Ooh, did my... Yeah, I don't know if my internet got really low. I'm not crazy about the face. Still needs some more work. Right, we can drop in this gradient. We can drop in her. We worked on her earlier. There we are. Bring that down like so. And that's kind of where this is at so far, right? I feel bad. I always end up with some like unfinished work. But again, I just put everything in one scene. I lit it. And now I have all these objects I get to use, right? Even that skull, right? Skull I might need to even bring in a little better, by the way. Don't you agree? Maybe. All right, I'm gonna use the smudge tool. I don't know if you guys do this, but I do. I just want to actually kind of stretch this down. So I'm just using the smudge tool, take on the strength a little bit because I just want a little bit more highlight down here. So that's kind of what I'm working on, making sure this matches up the side with the side of her face. Like so. All right, cool. You guys get the idea. Let's move on to my other example that I've been talking about for a while, right? I think this is like good enough for now. And I can always add more to this as well. Copy V, there we go. Command T, rotate this around, put it back here for this version, right? I want to get onto my other piece. Put this behind her, right? So it's going to be behind the hair, right? Just adding some depth. Command J, jump. Add some more depth, jump. There we are, right? Rotate that around like so, something like that. Okay, you get the idea. Jump it again, put it on top. Right? That's all we're doing, folks. Adding a layer mask. All right, you guys get the idea. All right, I'm going to do one more thing. Bear with me, everybody. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to go as fast as possible. Let's grab this again. I like this one. I could use these other flowers. Really haven't used them much, but that's okay. Command T to transform, and then I flip horizontal. But this needs to have some depth as well. So it needs to have some depth in front and behind. Right? There we are. You ever need to select something? Right? So I'm like, oh, where the heck is this little branch? Just hold down the Option key and click on it. You should be able to. Or am I thinking the wrong key? I'm wrong. The Command key, I apologize. So hold down the Command key, click, and now I can jump to that layer and start brushing out that little branch right there. Okay, so again, I'll still kind of need some work. Let's go big. Let's duplicate this whole thing, right? Let's turn this on. There we go. Do something like that. There we go. You guys get the idea. All right, so that's one version I'll continue to work on, but you saw me match the lighting and all that good stuff. Yeah. Cool. So there we have that. Let me work on that some more in my copious spare time, if you don't mind. Right? And let's take a look at a different subject, because again, you might be sick of, I'm sick of it as well. It's like, okay, enough. Why the death and destruction? Right? I would brighten this up as well. Why can I not stop working on this? This is what happens to my lunches. Like, I miss lunch. I don't eat anything. Right? Do you guys do that? You're like, work on something. You're starving, but you don't stop. You're like, what's my problem? Change that to overlay. We could start to burn in and brighten up that face right there and brighten up these other sides. All right, like so. All right, you guys get the idea. I'll have that finger overlap the, just so you know what I'm going to do next is I'm going to have that finger kind of overlap the skull so it's like all a little bit more integrated. I'll get rid of this weird eye thing right here. So again, command click. If sometimes things are getting in the way of your command click, lock them down, because sometimes I'll have a texture layer on top. Just lock it, and then you just can't select it anymore, which is great, because you want to command click and jump to that menacing layer that has the flower in it, and like so. Cool. All right, guys, we have this version. That's done. Let's save it. Let's not be so morbid. Let's move on to something else. In fact, I have another fun project right in here. An entirely different example, right? So we have this version. Let's wait for it. Wait for it. Hold on. Here's this. So it's like a 2D object. You're like, hey, I want to wrap some cool splatty textures around it. I'm gonna do this so fast. I don't know why I'm obsessed with speed for some reason, right? Let's make this linear, right? Let's try some different colors. Let's try this. Why not? Let's convert this to a smart object. Right? I want some cool swooshy colors. Let's go to liquify. Right? Let's liquify this puppy. Let's push all these colors around. Let's just have some fun. Right? That's what I want. Done. Hit OK. Shrink it down. It's going to change when I shrink it down and I use liquify. That's okay. I just want it over her. So here it comes in. Boom. There's our little splat. It's all splat-alicious. Wait for it. There we go. Right, I'm just kind of creating a random sort of spiel of colors. Right? It reapplies it each time. I kind of want something like this. So that's what I've done, at least for this piece. Rasterize layer. Right, and now I can kind of bend this and start to distort this into place. Let's go down here. How would you do this? A couple different ways. I know we have this funky edge. We'll fix that just by doing a delete. How about that? Oh, there we go. We have this swooshiness. Sure, we can make this a smart object. I would probably jump in and use, we have distort and warp, right? Warp is actually going to give you what you want. So as you can see right in here, we have these Bezier points. We drag this down, bring this over like so. And I'm kind of showing you this is because like this might be where you start if you're trying to sort of wrap something around this statue in this case, right? You'll use these different warp tools. You're going to get to a point where you're like, hey, you know what? This is a lot of work, right? Because I actually have to conform all these curves, this gradient around all these curves, and it's very laborious. But that's exactly what I did here. So if you could see right here, if I turn this on, you can see that this is actually the final piece, right? So I did actually go through, and if we take a look at each one of these, right, here is like most of the swooshes and stuff like that. Let's pick this apart a little bit. This one right here, you could see this is just the layer mask, right? That's bending around that. What did I use? I used distort, and I would also use smudge. Okay, you ready for this? I can even go back to my original example if I want to. So if I want to smudge this as part of it, let's go to liquify, and this allows me to smudge in these colors. So this is going to be an easier way to work. I go right up here at the top. There's a forward warp. I don't know why I call it the smudge tool, because it's not the smudge tool. And then you want to show, just like, show me, not layer, show me the layer I'm working with. Show me the statue. So the backdrop is going to be the statue. It gets rid of everything else, and now I can kind of bend this into place like that, right? So bend that down, right? Maybe it ends like right there. This part, push that over, right? Just like that. So this kind of just makes it like clay. So I'm kind of pushing this around as if it's like wet paint or clay to get it to work with all the curves of this. Okay, so you got it? Yeah, so this is a way to, we're reimagining a statue. I don't want to defile anything, but that's why I love Photoshop and these tools is we can, I don't know if you want to call it defiling or reimagining something while maintaining the current. There's actually a guy, and what he does is he actually paints on these like old statues and stuff, which that's pretty intense. So we'll click OK, just like that. We can go through, we can change the blend modes. Notice how darken's going to give us some nice work. But more importantly, take that statue, this original image, put it on top, clip it, right? So now it's now inside. See how it's inside there? But now I will go through and I will play with and change this to overlay or soft light or something. Right? Or pin light. Anyways, just showing you how this is done and how you can get this look. Right? How you can manipulate stuff. Right? But this is a lot of work, folks. It's so much work. Couldn't I do this in 3D? Yeah. You better be able to if you're going to bring it up, Paul. Right? You better be able to if you're... okay, so let's do that now. Miscellaneous. Let's take this fun. Let's take some of these fun color splats. Right, so this is a pretty cool one. I think some of you know where I'm going to go with this, but here's my cool color splat. Let's drop this in here in my library. I could also export it out. But there we go. It's just called Gradient Fill 2, right? Now we can go ahead and use dimension because we happen to have, say, you know, again, a statue. That's a 3D model, and it's just going to be easier to take that. Yeah, so Mia, that's a great point. Richard, Mia, nailed it. Displacement map could do it. A displacement map only bumps it up like... not very much, like half an inch. Like, just isn't It isn't quite dramatic enough, but that is a great call. So that's what I do to convince you of a certain amount of depth. Oh man, I'm so sorry. Ignore this scene. All right, and I'm glad let's just get rid of that. Sorry guys, ignore this, ignore this, ignore this. Right, so again, statue. Right, let's make her a little modest. I'm sorry about that, but this is, you know, we're all adults here. Here's my statue, right? Could actually have a whole different texture on it as well, now that I think about it. Maybe it does, because I do have some of those. Here's this Valencia. Yeah, that's not bad. Let's keep it as white. Let's go to our library, into miscellaneous, into the there we go, color splash, gradient fill, and drop it right on her. And I'll start mapping accordingly. What I'm doing now is actually it's applying it as a decal, right? Is this Paul showing 2 ways to accomplish the same task? I'm showing you, yes, in some ways. I'm showing you the roadblocks you run into, because most people will start here, by the way. And this looks really good, but this takes so much work. It's so much work trying to push this around. I love Photoshop gives you that precision, but sometimes you're like, you just want to wrap something in a texture, use 3D. So yeah, I guess I am showing you the same way. 2 different ways to do the same thing, but obviously one has more control than others. Like, it just depends on what you're working with. So right here, so notice how it's actually being applied as a decal. Boom. And now I can move this. It's like, let's kind of move this, say, down here. We'll rotate it. Right? This is looking awesome. Right, let's take another one. Heck, you know what? You could apply multiple decals to an image. Yeah, so use case for... So, Mallory, by the way, when we look at both of these, I feel like dimensions, this is easier to make, but I almost need to render it as a higher quality, because the reason I like this Photoshop one is because, guess what? This is the actual Photoshop image. Like, it's an actual real image, so this just sells it much more, in my opinion. So here we have this. I only have like a couple of minutes left, right? But this is how I would put this together. Let's rotate this around. The mapping might vary depending on the object, right? How it wraps will vary, just so you know. You could always use shortcut keys. I'm using one. There we go. She has a shirt on, by the way. Let's fix her shirt. By the way, Jason's up next. I'm sorry I've not looked at the schedule, but I think everything's being kind of weird with the schedule right now. Might just be me. But look at that. Let's just kind of drop this on. I think this is really fun to work with because it's powerful and makes things easy. There we go. Kind of like something like that. Look at the flexibility I have. I like this angle. I like this. Right? Render this out. What do? We render this out. Where is it? And then start to clean it up some more. So that's what I did here. Here's one. Cleaned up. I would duplicate it. And then you might need to smudge. So again, just using the smudge tool, cranked up to 80. And you might need to smooth out some of these lines by smudging them. So that's what I did, just to kind of smooth it out a little bit. You know, so again, there's still some handwork that needs to be done, but not bad for a day's work, and not bad for what we did today, huh? Look at the amount of work that we roughly did. So hopefully you learned something. I use 2D and 3D together all the time. 3D gives me the flexibility that I want. 2D, you know, we're talking photos, so it's just gonna be more realistic when you're using 2D as well. Oh, Mia, you are too kind. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me. Stick around for Jason. He's up next. I'm going to check it out, too. So thanks so much, everybody. And love it. We will see you soon. Stick around, everyone.